Welcome to Jesus Changes Everything, a daily podcast dedicated to providing a fresh look at the ancient and glorious truth that Jesus not only reigns, but is busy about the business of bringing all things under subjection, that celebrates the wonder and the glory that he has been given all authority in heaven and on earth. We come now to 2 Samuel in our ongoing series, The Bible in 5 Minutes. It's my task in these little pieces to give you a bird's eye view, a 30,000-foot overview of each of the books of the Bible. And one could argue that I'm a little late because we know that in the ancient Hebrew Bible, 1st and 2nd Samuel were actually one book. But I'm looking at it as two books, and that's how it's presented to us in our day. Now, if you recall last time, at the end of 1 Samuel, we see the death of Saul. David had already been anointed as the new king, but had not actually come into his power. And we see in 2 Samuel that happening by stages. That is, after the death of Saul, David is made to be the king over Judah, but not the rest of Israel immediately, which could be a kind of foreshadowing of what was going to happen in the reign of his grandson after the end of Solomon's reign, when the kingdom does in fact split in two. But in this context, the kingdom actually comes back together after a time as the northern tribes join up with David and ask him to serve as their king as well. And then we watch more success for David as he has a wonderful military victory over the Philistines, and very crushing defeat. And he manages to, in a manner of speaking, extend the borders of Israel all the way out to that place that God described himself to Abraham when he first spoke of the promised land. Up until this point, the nation of Israel had not gotten to that stage, but now their borders are precisely where God said they would be when he made the promise to Abraham. In addition to that, inside those borders, David is successful in defeating the Jebusites and winning the city of Jerusalem. He eventually chooses that place as his own headquarters. And then one of the big stories in the book is David's intention to build a temple for God there in Jerusalem. And I think that helps us get to the center of the message of the book. Here's why. David understandably, honorably wants to please God, and he comes to God and says, hey, you need a house. You're living in a tent, and that is the tabernacle, is what we've had for worship when we were wandering around, but now we're settled, now we're established, and I'm going to build you a temple. And God's response is, no, you're not. And you're not because of the life that you've led, the warfare that you've been involved in. You're a man with bloody hands. Now, I want to unpack that in just a minute, a little bit. But first, I want you to notice that God does not merely say, no, you're not going to. One of the reasons that we know that God's not annoyed at David for wanting to do this is because he turns around and says to David, you're not going to build me a house. I'm going to build you a house. David, I'm going to build you a house. You or one of your descendants will from this time forward always be sitting on the throne of this nation. There may be some judgments along the way. There may be some hardships along the way. I'm not saying that that can't happen, but what I am saying is I'm not going to take the throne away from your descendants. I'm going to establish a house for you. What I love about that, friends, is we get a powerful picture of the nature and the power of the gospel. David, in a manner of speaking, I'm not trying to blame him. Again, God didn't blame him, but in a manner of speaking, David is bringing religion. That idea of man climbing the mountain up to God. God, I'm going to build you a house. I'm going to do this for you. You have a lack, and I'm going to fill that lack to show my devotion to you. And God politely, essentially laughs. Yeah, David, I don't have a lack. You can't build me a temple, but I can do something for you. That's his nature. You know, when the Bible says that God will not share his glory with another, it certainly includes the notion that we should not be spreading our praise around outside of God or give him 95% of the glory and 5% to something else. That's included. But what's not the point is that God is like jealous, and he's saying nobody ever better say anything good about anybody else. The commitment that he will not share his glory with another is him affirming that he will do what needs to be done. Think about it in the context of Gideon's mighty men. I just love that story. Gideon, you got too many men. You go into battle like that, heck, you guys will think you did it. I want you to cull that down. Get down to 300. Where there's no way you could possibly win with just 300 men against all those bad guys out there. Oh, but I can. Why do you think God sent David himself out against Goliath? Sent a boy. Was it to teach us how great David's faith was? Or was it to teach us that it's God who gives the victory? 2 Samuel is the story, is the reminder, is the message in the midst of success and blessing of God saying, yeah, this is about me, not about you. Having established for us the relationship between God's moral law and his written law, the Westminster Divines, in their publication, the Westminster Shorter Catechism that we've been working our way through, they come now to what is the beginning of a relatively long process of a kind of verse-by-verse exposition of the Ten Commandments. Question 43, our focus for today, asks, what is the preface to the Ten Commandments? And the Divines tell us the preface to the Ten Commandments is in these words, I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt and out of the house of bondage. Now, I was all set and prepared to take some time to unpack the meaning of that introductory phrase, when I realized that what comes next in question 44 is an unpacking of that introductory phrase. In fact, what we have here is the beginning of a section of the Shorter Catechism that could rightly sort of stand alone, because what is coming is not only a quoting of the Ten Commandments, an unpacking of the Ten Commandments, but all of that done so in a particular intentional fashion and in a very helpful way. In fact, well, let me just go ahead and explain that way, and then I want to add something to that. Here's what the Divines do in this section, and there's, I don't know, probably it's the next 40 or so questions, maybe 50 questions. Again, they'll ask, what does it say? And then, what does it mean? And then there might be a question, what does this law command us to do? And then the next one might be, what does it forbid us to do? Now, it is a shorter catechism, but what it does is, again, broadens our understanding to recognize that you can't take the narrowest possible view and think you're being faithful to the text. It's a brief opening up of the fullness of each of these commands. It's like when Jesus again said, if you hate your brother unjustly, you've committed murder. If you lust in your heart, you've committed adultery. That's a quick, brief, but clear unpacking of the fullness of the meaning of the command. That kind of stuff goes on. But if you want more, and you should, in my judgment, the best source to understand what falls under each of the commandments. What are the things I need to be on my guard against if I want to keep the second commandment? What are the things I need to watch out for as I try to keep this ninth commandment? The best place for that, outside of the Word of God, is actually in the larger catechism. The larger catechism, in many ways, it suffers from being too narrow a slice of the pie. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, I've been a Mac guy for a long time, and I work with a MacBook Air. And when the iPad came out, I got an iPad. And when the iPhone came out, actually I waited till, I think my first iPhone was either a 3 or a 3S. I got one of those. And then they came out with an iPad mini, and I thought, my stars, what more could they possibly do? Then they came up with the extra large iPhone. And I thought, they're dividing up the screen sizes into more and more and more and more and more of these things. Well, one could argue that the Westminster Confession of Faith is an extended exposition of the doctrines of our faith, that the shorter catechism is a short version of that, and the larger catechism is kind of this awkward adolescent in-between stage. But when it comes to the Ten Commandments, that's where the larger catechism just shines. So let me commend that to you. I'm not going to shift this segment out of shorter catechism into larger catechism and then back again when we get through the Ten Commandments. But if you want to have a better grasp, I can't imagine a better place to go, which is high praise indeed. It's not like no one's ever written about the Ten Commandments before, but the larger catechism is a great place to get the beginning of a grasp on the scope of them. Now, we know from the shorter catechism what is the preface to the Ten Commandments. It's a part of the Ten Commandments, and when this gets unpacked next time we're together, I'm sure we will talk about the significance of the preface, why it's there. But here's a hint. It has to do with ancient Near Eastern treaties. That's why it's there. So I hope you'll be back next week when we will once again have another segment on the Westminster Shorter Catechism. One of the great blessings of the digital age is that it can so powerfully reduce our marginal costs. I'm going to have to give you just a very brief lesson in economics here, in case you're unaware of the distinction between fixed costs and marginal costs. Fixed costs are those costs that will remain the same no matter how many or how few widgets you produce. So let's say that I'm in the business of making widgets. What are widgets, you say? Widgets are make-believe economic creations. They're a placeholder in the argument. So I got this widget factory. If I want to sell widgets, I need to have a design for a widget. Whether I make one widget or a million widgets, I still have to have a design put together. I have to have the packaging designed for the widget. I have to have the usefulness designed for the widget. I have to have the machinery that makes the widget. But how many widgets I make requires me to adapt how much raw materials I use. If I make one, I don't need very much raw materials. But if I make a second one, I need a little bit more. But I don't need to start the whole process from scratch. I already have the design. I already have the factory. I already have this. I already have that. Those are marginal costs. Now, I mention all of this because I have costs associated with producing this podcast. I have a computer that sits on my lap while I'm doing this. I have a microphone that hangs in front of me while I do this. I have software. I have time and energy by which I plan and record. But if I had one listener, it would take all of that to get it done. If I had 1,000 listeners, it would take no more of that to get it done. My marginal costs are virtually zero, which means that growth is good. That growth can't bankrupt us. The more people we're able to reach, the less it costs per person. Because we spread our fixed costs across all the people that we reach. And our marginal costs are approaching zero. So what does that mean to you? Well, it means this. One, your donation to the work of Dunamis Fellowship, including the production and distribution of the Jesus Changes Everything podcast, has the potential to multiply powerfully. Because we're still at that place where what we need is support sufficient to give me the time to do these things. Support sufficient to make sure I have these most basic tools. Support sufficient to hit our actual costs on the fixed cost level. And once we get that, every bit of growth from there, it's all gravy. Because the costs are virtually nothing. Which brings us to the second point. Not only can you have a great impact through the Jesus Changes Everything podcast by supporting the work of Dunamis Fellowship, but you can do the same thing by spreading the word. If you tell people, hey, I'm really blessed by this podcast. Hey, this podcast really makes me think. Hey, you know, when I go to work in the morning and I turn on my podcasts in my car, the Jesus Changes Everything podcast, it almost always gives me a reminder of the grace of God. It almost always gives me a new direction to pursue His kingdom. You should listen too. And that costs you nothing. And when that person goes and signs up and subscribes to receive the Jesus Changes Everything podcast, it costs us nothing. But we reach more people. So that's what I'm asking you to do. Both of those things. Either of those things. Both of those things and more. I'm asking if you can help us meet those costs that don't go away no matter how big we are. And if you can set us up, put us in a place where we can grow and help us to grow, because such growth adds no additional financial burden on us. It's amazing. As you listen to this podcast, it's not wearing out. It's just zeros and ones. And everybody else in the world, if they wanted to, could get the zeros and the ones. But so many of them don't know about it. So please, will you consider helping prayerfully the work of Dunamis Fellowship and our desire to see the resurrection power of Jesus Christ made manifest in the lives of his people? Will you help us to instruct and encourage God's people to come to embrace that the reign of Jesus knows no bounds, that his promise knows no limits, that Jesus is, in fact, changing everything. You've been listening to the Jesus Changes Everything podcast, a production of Dunamis Fellowship, the teaching outreach of Dr. R.C. Sproul Jr. If you've enjoyed this podcast, we encourage you to subscribe, which you can do at all the usual outlets, to tell your friends, and to spread the word. To learn more about the work of Dunamis Fellowship, please visit rcsproulJR.com and join us next time on Jesus Changes Everything.